Welcome to the Design Build Institute of America's Design Build Delivers podcast. I'm Kim Wright at DBIA's national headquarters. Today, we're talking about an online tool coming this year designed to help owners assess their design build skill set and, truthfully, whether their teams are even ready to make the shift to a fully collaborative process. The Pankow Foundation is in the midst of a massive research and development process for not just this tool, but also comprehensive guides that will then help define what's needed to successfully manage the design phase of a DB project. As our guest, Greg Gidez, the Director of Design Services at Hensel Phelps and a DBIA Fellow, and Bryan Franz, researcher and associate professor at the University of Florida's School of Construction Management, tell us, these exciting new tools will have value for every member of a design build team. Before we get started, DBIA offers our special thanks to US CAD for partnering with us to bring this year's episodes of Design Build Delivers. Thank you, Greg, for joining us. We're going to talk to you and Bryan today about some really important work underway this year at the Pankow Foundation. But let's start really at the big picture. DBIA has long had a relationship with Pankow because, as a partner, we're doing a lot of the same things. We have a lot of the same goals. And this year's exciting because we've got a new project delivery assessment tool to talk about, plus the design management guides. So let's back up a little bit. As a DBIA fellow, as our Brunelleschi winner, and a very involved Pankow member as well, why do you think this relationship is important?
Well, it's important to advance the conversation so that we get it right. If we're all doing our own thing, then there's no consistency and we don't understand what the best processes are. So one of the things that we look for both at the Pankow Foundation as well as at the DBIA is how to establish those best practices built on the research and the principles of getting it right.
And Pankow has done a lot of really good research. Research is expensive. Research costs money. And there are a lot of professionals there at Pankow that have helped really design some terrific resources. This year, particularly, we're excited about their project delivery assessment tool, which is new. Let's start there. What is this tool designed to do? Okay, well, it's really important for the owners to get it right when they select their delivery methods for their projects. If they don't understand the principles of the project delivery, there's a chance they may not get it right. So what the assessment tool is a mirror for owners to look at themselves and their organization to determine whether they're capable of doing design build or whether they're better off doing a hard bid process in order to execute their project. So it's an internal assessment of the owners to look at their people, look at their organization to determine the strategies to procure their work. So if they're behaviorally designed to succeed at design build, then design build is a recommendation. If their organization is not capable of delegating decision making and working in that team environment, it's more of a top down, then maybe hard bid is the way they need to go. For us at DBIA, this is particularly exciting because, as we all know, there is such a thing as design build done wrong, and we've seen it, and it can have lasting impact on teams and owners and the process overall. So, for an owner who says, "Oh, I can do design build," what are you talking about? This allows them to some targeted ways to really answer that question for real.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about design build done right and design build done wrong. The worst projects that I've ever been involved with were design build done wrong. The best projects I've ever been involved with, the design build done right, because everybody understands what needs to be done and how to be successful at it. So it's very important to understand the nuances of design build to determine whether you can work in that environment. The team structure, the partnerships, the relationships are very important to the success of the project. It's not just do it on the paper and get it done. It involves a lot more integration of the team, expression of ideas. So it's a more complementary and developed process. And if you're not set up for doing that, you can set yourself up for failure.
When we talk about the mental shift required, and that's a cultural issue in an organization. I mean, some organizations are just not set up for that type of mental shift to true collaboration, because you've got to give to truly collaborate.
That's correct. And it's very important that the leadership at the top of the organization expresses the goals of the project and helps the team make the mental shift. If the leadership hasn't made the mental shift, the team will not make that mental shift. So leadership pushed down onto the team is very important to getting it right.
And design build done wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me often that comes from owners who want the single source contract and just basically shift that risk.
That's correct. Owners need to choose design build for the right reasons, and it's not just to push all the risk on somebody else and not worry about it. Risk should be managed by the people most appropriate and capable of managing that risk. So the owners need to retain some of that risk and then pass on to the design builder what's appropriate and what the design builder can manage. Risk comes with a cost, and the more the risk, the more the cost associated with it and the contingencies. And so if too much risk is transferred, then the scope of the work will be diminished because the money will go to covering the risk.
Right. So when you talk about creating a tool, it sounds easy enough, but I know it absolutely is not, because how do you know what questions to ask? What are you trying to get at when you're trying to figure out an owner's actual proficiency at doing design build?
Well, if you'd asked me, I'd get all the questions wrong because I am not the academic when it comes to this. So we're working with the University of Washington and Renee Cheng and her team up there who understand behavior and psychology and the characteristics of a project done right. And so they're the ones that know what questions to ask. And a lot of them are probing questions about decision-making and organizational structure and how the work is carried out. Is it a top-down or is it a horizontal? Is the team allowed to make decisions, or does it all need to go up to the top? So your organizational structure, how you make decisions, how you empower your team is very important to get right when you're doing it, design build.
I think it's interesting, too. I think GSA had a similar approach to try to get at this question, but we're building on that work by it's been attempted, and now you're building on that at Pankow.
Yeah, and it goes back a ways. We did a research project at the Pankow Foundation on project delivery and how to maximize success, and it all starts with the owner. And so the GSA looked at that and said, we need to assess our people to determine whether we're capable of doing design build. We understand that design build, when done right, can have great benefits for the project. But if you don't have the right team, you're not going to succeed. So the GSA built on that, developed the research tool to look at their internal characteristics of their own teams. And it was very eye-opening to them. What they determined was that there were some regions in the country that were just incapable of doing design build and would have to do CM at risk or hard bid. They just did not have the people or the personalities to be successful. Other regions, they had the people and the personalities in place, and they understood the process and are highly successful in delivering design build projects. So if you're not right, it starts with the owner. The owner needs to be right. The owner needs to understand the best practices, and they need to know how to empower the team to get the maximum value from the project.
Well, that's interesting, too, because, at DBIA, we talk about the importance of becoming an owner of choice. I mean, industry knows which owners are doing it right, which owners are making it hard. I would think something like this. Owners want to be the owner of choice, and GSA had made that effort. And so it seems like it's a win-win for both industry and owners.
It is a win-win. And when an owner understands how to execute a project at a high level, and that they know how to work with the team and empower the team, they know how to manage their risks and understand the risks of their partners, that's how you get a successful project. And so it all starts with the owner, and industry is going to follow. An owner's going to, if they have bad practices, well, their bill's going to go up. It's going to cost more to get the work done. If they have good practices and they work with the team, that's how you get the most efficient and effective delivery.
And in those owners of choice that we see out there, every year or every project, they're building on the successes that they had in a previous project. And I know you've seen that at Hensel Phelps, where there are owners who just continue to raise the bar on design build excellence. They were good at it, and then they become great at it.
Yeah. And the first one is a learning experience. The second one is where you really can start excelling. And what we've learned over time is that working with owners And being successful does two things. It's a more of a fulfilling work environment. Everybody feels good about it at the end of the day. And guess what? The owners are happy and we get repeat work. And repeat work's a hell of a lot easier to get than new work. And so building on our successes really refines the process and allows us to even go further in the execution of the projects.
Are you interested in sustainable design and construction practices but concerned about profitability? US CAD, a Zero company, helps forward-thinking ENR top-ranked AEC firms mitigate risk and drive profit through digitalization using Autodesk AEC technology. To learn more, contact uscad.com/DBIA for a free 30-minute consultation. That's uscad.com/DBIA.
So we can see why it's critical. This tool is going to help owners, figure out their proficiency. This is an online tool, right? They'll be able to use this. Okay. And we're looking at this year for this release, and it's going to, set this course for owners to determine what's next. So, okay, they're proficient. They can do design build. The question is then, now what? How do we give them the tools to do that? This is the time we're going to pull in Bryan, Dr. Bryan Franz. He's the assistant professor of construction management at the University of Florida. He's helping Pankow with their research because the next step is you build guides to help these owners know how to do it.
Yes, and this all started about 10, 12 years ago. I was sitting with Rick Kunith from the Pankow Foundation, also of Pankow Builders, and he said, I take on all this risk doing design build, and I have not a clue what happens in the studio and how they do design, yet I'm at risk for it. We need a tool to help us. So we conceived of the design management guides as a tool to assist the team in best practices in executing a design build project, because it's not like the old style in the studio, schematics, design development, CDs. It's not that way. It's a more integrated process. So we developed the guides, the design management guide, to help teams to execute design build at a high level. And the guide was in place and very effective tool for a decade or so. We decided we needed to upgrade to reflect some of the new movements in the industry, such as progressive design build, the use of building information modeling, and virtual design and construction. We needed to bring them into the conversation. So we got with the DBIA. They put together a task group who came back and said, yep, all that stuff is good, but we need to focus on the nuances between the different sectors because they're all different. So the guide was written around the vertical sector around buildings, but we have horizontal in highways and roads and bridges. We have infrastructure, water, wastewater projects like that. We have the federal sector, which does business differently from the private sector. And we have aviation, which is all inclusive, that has both horizontal as well as vertical, and then the challenges of working with many, many agencies, TSA, FAA, airport authorities, building departments. So a lot of complexity in those type projects. So that's where Bryan and his team come in, is how do we develop those guides to help in those nuanced sectors of our industry. It's more than just the vertical building. It's everything in the infrastructure that comes with it.
So Bryan, fill us in on the work that you've got to do to help get these guides up and running for this year.
Yeah, thanks. So I want to emphasize it's very much a team effort. So, it's myself at the University of Florida. We have Jennifer Shane at Iowa State University and Dr. Susan Bogus at University of New Mexico. And we're all sort of tackling different market sectors to bring all this information together. And so where we started was really just putting together a large, diverse group of subject matter experts. So we call them SMEs, just to represent all the different perspectives that we see in the industry and across all those different market sectors. So that SME group now is over 50 individuals, and it's owners, it's contractors, it's designers, it's specialty contractors. So things like precast concrete or steel fabrication, steel fabricators. And we're trying to bring them all together to give us a very holistic view of how design build works, and specifically the role of the design phase manager within these different sectors.
I mean, Bryan, this is a massive project because you're updating what exists, but then creating some new ways to deliver this information as well. So tell us a little bit, just from an overview perspective, what this is going to look like.
Yeah, so there's two main parts, I think, that are going to be a big contribution here. The first is the update to the main design management guide, which is the one that it has been historically focused on vertical construction, and so on the building sector specifically. And so one of the things that we're doing with that is reorganizing it. So we're centering it around the phases of a design build project, from proposal through post-award, early design, getting into late design and construction. So it's going to be organized more chronologically as opposed to topically. And so within each of those phases, we're going to be describing the kinds of things that are going to be happening, the kinds of tasks that are going to be performed by the design phase manager, why those tasks are important, and then the kinds of competencies that are needed for each of those tasks. So it's meant to be much more of a living resource. I think the original guide was a printed book that maybe you have on your shelf, and it may or may not get opened during a project. With this, we've designed it to be from electronic from the ground up. So it's going to be searchable, it's going to be indexed, it's going to be cross-referenced. It's going to be really focused on usability. So that if you find yourself on a design build project and you're thinking, what should I be doing during this phase, it's a very easy reference to go in and find that phase, find what should be happening, and get some ideas of how to successfully navigate that phase of that design build project. So that's the main guide update. The other big portion is the market sector playbook. So recognizing that design build is much more than just vertical construction now. It's permeating into all different types of sectors, highway, water, wastewater, and so forth. And so that there needs to be some specific guidance. And so these playbooks are going to be providing market sector specific guidance to owners, to design phase managers on where there are differences in the design build process, and then how that actually impacts the work that needs to be done. So they're going to be very much a lighter resource than the main guide. So we're targeting these to be 10 to 20 pages. They're really just highlighting the differences and the uniqueness of the sector, whereas you may need to reference the main guide to get the full context of what's actually going on.
I'd also like to add that not only is it more usable, what we're doing with the guides, but they're also accessible. So these are free to everyone. There's no cost involved. They're industry resources that we're putting out there for the use of industry, and we're trying to get them in as many hands as possible. So no cost. This is really important concept that it is in the public domain of what we're doing here.
Yeah, and I think these are going to be really great as training resources because, and for people who are involved in design build projects day to day. Coming from an academic perspective, I know that we train construction managers really well to be construction managers. I know that we train architects to be great designers. I know that we train engineers to be great professional engineers. It's really hard. We don't do a very good job, I don't think, of training people to work on design build projects because you really need understanding of all of those different disciplines in order to be an effective integrator. And so I think this resource will help to bridge that gap a little bit and help us to break down some of the walls between disciplines to just lead to more effective design build projects.
And that goes for the owners too, educating the owners on how best to lead their design build teams, to give them the tools and the processes to be successful based on the principles, the best practices principles. So it wraps it all together.
And when you look at all the various sectors, where do you get started in coming up with what needs to be done for these guides?
It's a little like herding cats at times, but where we started was by performing a what's called a job analysis on the role of the design phase manager, which means what we wanted to do was understand what it was that someone in this position on a design build project would be doing. So the kinds of tasks that they would be involved in at different stages of a design build project, and then how those efforts may change depending on what sector they're in. So the sectors are unique in different ways, and they may approach design build a bit differently. And so how does that work? And so we pulled groups or subgroups of these subject matter experts together into what we called research charrettes, which is very much like a design charrette. It's a workshop where we bring together different perspectives, and we sit them all in a room, we ask them questions, and we try to understand what design build means to them, what the role of the design phase manager means to them, so that we can parse out those specific tasks that are being performed at different parts of a project.
I would imagine there are a number of challenges in approaching a project this large. What are some of the things that you've got to knots you have to untie?
One of the biggest things was just the terminology surrounding design build.
Definitely.
Every sector uses slightly different words for something, slightly different terms for something. But, when you're this neutral observer as a researcher sitting in on all of these different research charrettes, you see the similarities between them. And so despite the fact that everyone was using maybe a slightly different term for a type of contract or a type of procurement, we were able to tease out some of the commonality between them. And so one of the first things we did was create this inclusive glossary of terms where we're really just trying to pin down the terminology, which may span different sectors, right? And so we're just trying to get everyone using the same words to describe the same concept or phenomenon or process or whatever it is.
Well, one of the terms that I think was pretty consistent across the whole exercise was the term risk. And what are the risks and who owns them? And that's something that's really been an eye-opener to me as I look at the different sectors and what the challenges are that need to be overcome by the team. So in a vertical building market, we have certain risks, whether they're material risk, cost, erection, inspection, those kinds of things. But in some of these horizontal projects, they have different risks: right-of-ways, utilities, railroads, things that we don't really consider in the vertical sector. So getting that all out on the table and letting everybody understand what the risks are and who best to manage those risks is going to be very very important to the industry to get it, help us get it right.
Yeah, definitely. And it does affect how design build is implemented, what kind of priorities are given to different tasks as part of the design build process. And so one of our goals is to just parse out those risks and how it affects the process, so that when we write what we're calling specific playbooks, which are geared towards the sector, that it will be more meaningful to folks that work in that part of the industry.
When you look at the sectors, and I know this you're early in this process, do you find there are differences even in gathering data from them and getting the information? I mean, they're all the sectors tend to have their own little personalities. They're all different. They approach work differently. They approach a lot of things differently. Is that something that even impacts you in trying to gather information?
I think so. So some sectors are, how do I say it, maybe more self-aware of their own processes. And so they can be very organized in how they describe what it is that they do. Others are a little bit more scattered, where every company may do something different, or different owners may do things different. And so it's a little bit more difficult to pull together that information and make sure that we're accurately representing all of what's going on within that sector. So like, for example, the industrial side that we've talked to, the industrial sector has some very well-defined processes in place. And the way that they talk about their work is very easy to follow, right? We can very clearly connect the dots as to what's different and what it is that they do, what's important to them, and how that impacts the design build process. As I said, other sectors, not so much. It really depends on who you talk to and who has that information, and trying to talk to the right people to fill in all the missing pieces.
One of the things that we talked about, the glossary of terms and consistencies, if I use the term design excellence and I look at all these different sectors, what is design excellence in each of the sectors? So in design excellence in a vertical building, it may mean an award-winning structure, aesthetically pleasing. Maybe that's what the owner wants, or it's a bank and it's solid and massive and strong. But, what is design excellence in a water wastewater plant? It's the quality of the product at the end of the pipe. It's not the building itself. Each of those disciplines are nuanced in what their goals are and what they think design excellence is, or what determines success, what defines success.
Which is why I think guides like this are so important, and the fact that you are segmenting them, because you write a generic guide these days, it's just not going to have the same value.
That's correct. Yeah, and the more we get into it, I think we've started with these 5 sectors that we defined: the water, wastewater, highways, federal. What am I missing here? Aviation, and they're all different. And now, as we expand that, we say, okay, well, what about the systems like precast, steel, mechanical, electrical? We can do a deep dive on each of these and develop those best practices for each of the sectors within some of these disciplines, or the disciplines within the sectors, to try to improve their performance and processes.
Yeah, and we're trying to hit on, and Greg alluded to it earlier, we're trying to hit on kind of the up and coming practices within the industry that haven't been well integrated into, a guide like this. So, design assist, BIM, but also specific uses of BIM, like facility management information or digital twinning, which may be more relevant to some sectors than others. And then the kind of offsite prefabrication, and how does the design build process interface with something like that, which is obviously gaining traction in the industry. It's being used on more and more projects. And so design build has to recognize that and incorporate it into its process.
And I think the development of these design management guides is quite timely. With this big infrastructure work we have coming out, these tools will help us to get it right, to do a better job, and to get more value out of the dollar. So it's a win-win for both the design builders, the owners, as well as society, if we can improve the processes.
It's interesting you mentioned society, because the triple bottom line impact has always been something that has been important in design build, and it's now almost codified in a lot of the federal infrastructure. They're asking for those types of impacts. I mean, cost and schedule are important, but they're asking also for a lot more in these buildings. So they're demanding more of industry.
They are. Before, we just needed to deliver the keys at the end of the project, but now we're looking at social issues, environmental issues, economic issues. We're looking at all kinds of things, and so as a industry, we need to take the higher ground and do a better job to help society that way. These tools, I think, will do a great job in helping us get there. Although it's a design management guide, it's not just for the designers or for the design builders, for the owners as well, and anybody that's engaged in the process, so they have a better understanding of how to maximize the value of the process. So it's really important that it's a team that utilizes the document, and not an individual or a company.
Yeah, because what we found is that, at least talking to the highway folks, that the design phase manager may be with the owner, with the DOT. And so there's definitely distribution of this role and the responsibilities that are performed by this role among the owner, among the design builder, among the designer. And so it's not necessarily one person that's doing a lot of what we're talking about in the design management guide.
And just to be clear, we talk about the Design Management Guide. And when we originally published a document, it was called the Design Management Guide. We got some resistance from that, from industry, that it needs to be more of a, it's broader than just a design management. So we changed the name to the Professionals Guide to Managing the Design Phase of a Design Build Project, which is a mouthful, but it's more comprehensive of what the concept is. And so it's really assisting the team and giving them that guidance on how to execute the project at a high level successfully.
Thankfully, you remembered that name.
Yes. But we'll continue to refer to them as the Design Management Guides.
For those of us who can't remember the mouthful.
For DMG, it's easier that way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. This is great, and it's going to be exciting to see both of these come out, because they will really, I think, move the marker for owners who need to find out what they're capable of and then have the guidance on how to do it.
100% agree.
We here at DBIA are excited to preview these new projects with you. We'll also share the news once they're released. But are you receiving DBIA's communications? It is the best way to ensure you don't miss a thing impacting design build teams. You can sign up for our emails and more at dbia.org/connect with us. Thanks again to Greg and Brian for giving us an advanced look at the new Pankow Foundation resources coming this year for design build teams. And another thank you to USCAD for their support of Design Build Delivers. Find out more at uscad.com/DBIA.